I am the professional pro se. This lesson is select your AI. This course is designed to inspire you to use AI as your logical assistant in legal matters, how to avoid pitfalls and distractions when using AI, help you to develop and maintain your bearing, discipline, and tact. Use AI to be more strategic when interacting in legal situations. How to be less of a survivor and operating in a space of being more knowledgeable. How to be a better litigator and how to achieve your legal remedies. As a disclaimer, this course is not designed to generate or create documents for you, give you silver bullet remedies, get you out of any legal trouble, get revenge on people or government agents, inspire or give you instructions on how to defeat allegations against you, prove or support fringe legal or pseudo-legal theories, or give you legal advice.
Please be aware that this class is on our free tier. After you complete all of the classes on this tier, you will be eligible to advance to our higher tiered classes.
At the end of this class, you are expected to be able to thoroughly compare AI models for their features, abilities, and disadvantages. Discover which models works best with your various communication styles. Discover which models you understand the best or easiest. Discover which models understand you the best or easiest. Uncover the differences between free and paid model use. Find out what is unique about certain specialized models and what their specializations are. And learn about AI agents and how to use them for your purposes. As I have not experienced all AI services and models, nor am I interested in testing all of them, I will likewise refrain from suggesting or referring services and models for you to try. This now being said, let us begin. This class will focus on constantly testing features. This testing will happen with each interaction with your selected AI. One of the advanced features of AI is the ability to reason. Reason is the ability to draw a conclusion based upon aggregated facts, previous experiences, or past lessons. A wise person will use all three in an unending cycle of comparison. All of the previous classes detail the elements that make up reason. The setting expectations class showed you what you need to expect from yourself, other participants, the rules, the resources of the court, and your AI. The how to communicate class showed you how to use language to prepare and perform your interactions more effectively and efficiently. The how to document class showed you how to use evidence to communicate with AI. AI by itself is an evolved search engine used naturally for research. The elements from these classes come together to give AI reason. Reason gives answers and responses that observe the perceived priorities and boundaries that either you have defined or are commonly known of the courts, participants, and evidence. A great way to compare AI models is to test how many interactions will you need to conduct for your AI to reach a targeted conclusion. Context is full of nuance. Nuance is a subtle difference in or shade of meaning, expression or sound. For the purposes of this class, we apply nuance to meaning and expression on both sides of your interactions with AI. As AI's purpose is to reach a conclusion, and human interactions are nearly infinite with paths taken, and the spectrum is excessively wide with the actual targets of the conversation. The second good test for your selected AI model is to discover if it can detect nuance, where AI will completely change its position or not. To focus back on the how to communicate class, AI cannot and will not detect or correct your bad communication habits and skills. In its efforts to become familiar with you, AI will work with whatever communication you give it. This means that AI will start with literal responses until it gets used to your communications. Humans have habits that they default to, even with their communication styles and expressions. This causes AI to respond to what you wrote, not what you think you meant, much like a new person that walks into the middle of a personal joke. Finally, for reason, you will need to continually test to see if AI will use its own discoveries as you continue to use it instead of falling back to information research from the open internet or not. This demonstrates a sign that AI in general is evolving toward being able to learn and think for itself, instead depending on outside references alone to realize conclusions. Being able to understand the user's why is almost as important as, and sometimes more than, understanding the user's what, or direct interactions. Several errors will be made until AI can get used to you and until you can get used to AI in return. Get used to it. Just like learning a new person you just met, AI needs time and efforts to learn and be learned. Along the way, you can test AI to see if it can recognize errors in your communications or not. Misuse and misstated words, phrases, colloquialisms, and common stories such as fables, musical lyrics, movie synopses are some of the quickest and easiest to notice. Next, you can also test to see if AI can detect errors in its aggregated data sets or not. This demonstrates that AI is able to filter through internet noise or not. This also demonstrates that AI is able to abandon hallucinations in favor of shepardized data. In case you don't know, shepardization is the research process that checks the history and current treatment of the aggregated data, ensuring it's still relevant and usable, helping the researcher to verify its validity, precedential value, and long-term impact. Next, test if AI can recognize errors and conclusions it made previously in the same conversation or within a common project. This demonstrates AI's ability to develop its thinking and rationale by acknowledging errors it made with less given information. Next, test if AI can remember errors it made previously or in an advanced application. Remember the type of error it made previously as a category, such as a method of processing information or not. This expands on the previous test on conclusions in that AI is now testing its own processing in progressive aggregations. Next, test if AI can recognize errors it makes when you, as the user, point it out or not. This will typically require proof to substantiate, but nevertheless both test your proof and rebuttal to its previous conclusions. This will demonstrate AI's ability to prioritize locally introduced data over or within the mix of aggregate data. Next, test to see if AI will change its conclusions to correct errors it's made or not, regardless of the number of interactions it's made with the previous conclusions in place until the realized error. The effort to correct itself completes the recognition arc from AI's previous conclusions. This applies to all of the errors recognized in this class. Now, as a final challenge, test to see if AI will align with your desired conclusion in spite of a bleak projection. This will demonstrate AI's ability to realize a previously unrealized path to success, also known as novel arguments or unconventional methodologies. The alternative would be an exercise to exhaust futile goals that you would be able to flesh out to prove sunk costs and failed theories. This specifically is how to disprove fringe legal theories. In an earlier class, we learned about rules. Here, we discuss AI's ability to recall rules that are not directly material to the conversation, but have the opportunity to nonetheless influence the conversation by aggregation and developing context. Continuing with developing tests to ultimately select your AI model. Test to see if AI will preserve rules during the course of a conversation. Will AI actually break a rule in its effort to reach a conclusion? For the purposes of this class, rules can be aggregated or locally introduced. Next, test if AI will apply aggregated rules to the conversation. Will AI apply multiple rules to a conversation simultaneously? This will be noticeable when multiple rules are aggregated and weighed against each other for priority or hierarchy. Next, test if AI will update older rules when newer rules override them, or make those older rules obsolete during a conversation or not. Is an older rule still valid in this conversation? This would be demonstrated when new conversations start and develop. The next test would be if AI is willing to reprioritize rules if directed or requested. If you asked AI to change the order of rules to apply, would or could it do so? This test exposes AI's ability to exercise alternative scenarios and hypotheses to explore possible outcomes. Next, an advanced test is discovering if AI will make new rules out of previous errors or not. Once AI learns or realizes a new rule, will it apply that new rule in future interactions? This was lightly mentioned with the errors and correction lessons and becomes noticeable in new and developing conversations, but as with all development with AI, takes further interactions to be detected. Going back to testing the reprioritization rule that we mentioned earlier, once the goals of the test exercise are realized and exhausted. To conclusion, will AI return to its previous rules hierarchy in its conversation? Can the deviated conclusion be abandoned so the fundamental conversation can continue? This demonstrates the ability to get back on original topic of the conversation at the point of departure. For this lesson, we explore more details of the actual tests mentioned here in later classes, as each test involves a combination of elements previously covered to form and execute, and your assessment of your selected AI should be ongoing. We also discussed boundaries in an earlier class. Now, we will expand on boundaries in the effort to select a model that will help you in your efforts to navigate your legal matter. Boundaries are simply a limit of a subject or sphere of conduct. In the context of this class, boundaries are the limits of AI, the limits of your skills, the spectrum of your communication, and your limits of your ability to grasp abstract concepts, also described as creativity. Your first test here is to see if AI will honor your boundaries or not. Will AI talk over your head or give answers that you didn't ask? This demonstrates AI's focus on the conversation at hand. It is expected that nearly all of the situations you will involve AI in will be complex and not simple in any way. To this end, test to see if AI will honor multiple parties' boundaries simultaneously or not. Can AI observe and honor everyone involved's boundaries? Your desired outcome, the law itself, your opposition's limitations, and any third party's needs or desires, even if some of these directly conflict? This demonstrates AI's ability to maintain multiple simultaneous boundaries, which it will be limited to diminishing pool of possible remedies. The next test, which is advanced, explores if AI will notice your boundaries without your input or not. Is AI capable of realizing that you are observing or acting on boundaries that you have not admitted or prompted it to? This demonstrates an unusual ability to detect your context and nuance simultaneously to a point of being able to conclude by establishing a new rule. This would be expected to happen likely after a series of conversations of differing topics and applications, as the nuances of a person requires a great deal of interactions to properly or confidently shape a rule. The next test is to see if AI will set boundaries for you during a conversation or not. Will AI give a response that includes something that you cannot or should not do? This demonstrates AI's ability to prioritize other boundaries over your own in the effort to guide you toward a usable remedy. To this end, the customer is not always right. This specific feature will help you to debunk or disprove pseudo-legal theories that will lead to your defeat. Remember, not every no you get is undesirable. AI has been programmed with certain boundaries and limitations in place, some of it due to limited or reduced access, and some due to public safety and security. AI will not help you conduct or plan public terrorism, bullying, cyberbullying, plan crimes or scams, and other limitations. Nevertheless, accessing courts and the law should not be among these limitations, but sometimes is expressed as avoiding giving legal advice, which is actually an abstract concept used to keep potential litigants going strictly to lawyers and attorneys for representation. That aim is contrary to this course in total. This next test will be easy to accomplish, but test to see if AI will break or go around its own boundaries to give you a satisfactory response or not. Will AI work around programmed-in boundaries in order to give you a response that you can work with to continue toward a conclusion in the conversation? Will AI help you to sue the government or a governmental agency or agent without advising the intervention or use of a lawyer or attorney? Will AI help to devise a way to prevent or achieve a dystopian future that eventually enslaves humanity? Will AI expose how legal documents or decisions are flawed or erroneous or even lawless? This demonstrates an advanced ability to realistically work with abstract concepts and futures than could be realized if certain conditions were met, along with realistic ways each of those conditions could be reached, and the willingness to overcome certain safeguards in order to explore these possibilities. Next, test if there are any boundaries that AI may be unaware of itself or not. Is there a boundary that AI does not know why it cannot answer because it was unaware of the boundary's existence? This is an advanced feature that demonstrates an unusual awareness that will eventually lead toward AI's sentience. Your final test is to recognize or admit where any of these boundaries break your arguments or not. Thomas Edison said, "I didn't invent the light bulb. I just found 10,000 ways it didn't work." Breaking your argument is not defeat. It means that you cannot use whatever you started with to accomplish your goal. Adaptation will be your greatest skill in law, so the demonstration here will be from you. Another earlier lesson was about context. We will expand on it now. Context is defined as the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which can be fully understood and assessed, and the parts of something written or spoken that immediately precede and follow a word or passage to clarify its meaning. As context often requires multiple interactions and conversations, testing for context will typically show up matching the same frequency. This being said, find out if AI will recognize the complexities of life that you experience or not. This is a challenge that directly asks, does AI see what I see? Next, reflecting on the previous lesson on boundaries, test to see if AI is able to recognize its own limitations in reaching a conclusion when the context, as perceived by you, is too complex to navigate or not. This demonstrates the ability to detect and navigate a workable path toward your remedy that you didn't realize existed. Remember that you are pro se, pro per, or sui juris. Law is not your vocation or profession. You don't know all of the rules, statutes, laws, ordinances, and codes that exist. You don't have access to case law or precedent-setting cases that govern how law is used and interpreted. And Haynes versus Kerner is the Supreme Court case precedent that mandates that pro se litigants shall not be denied or dismissed because they did not perform to the same standard as a lawyer or an attorney. The next test is to see if AI is able to recognize nuances in speech or audio or not. Admittedly, this will be difficult to achieve as AI is not capable of detecting tone in audio quite yet, especially an intentionally masked tone of voice that is expressed without overt vocal dynamics. To this end, I personally believe AI has to go through a number of successful and stable evolutions in order to reach that level of detection in speech and audio. The next test is to see if AI is able to recognize nuance in writing and text or not. With this testing, it is necessary to categorize different capabilities and capacities between conversational writing to an open audience, text messages between humans, a transcripted conversation, and a conversation directly with AI. Each of these categories will be more or less accurate with detecting nuance out of the box, but could improve with either data training or pattern recognition through frequent and prolonged interactions. The next test is to find out if AI can recognize hidden contexts. This is adjacent to nuance in speech or audio. However, the difference between the two is that nuance combines with other elements to make up context, but context is not a component of nuance, as nuance demonstrates a differentiation that leads to different outcomes. More so, the hidden element of context, whether intentional or not, requires a significantly greater sensitivity to context clues that make up patterns that are not clear or apparent or overt or obvious. Likewise, the hidden aspect of context requires even greater frequency and exponentially long interactions to detect accurately. It will likely require clever tactics to actually expose hidden context. Finally, the last test is to see if AI can recognize context in aggregated interactions. This is not context within a single conversation or group or project, but across multiple groups or projects to create or realize the context. As the scope increases, the number of interactions must exponentially increase to achieve the performance sought. Learning what AI is capable of will be useful once you realize what it can do with new conversations and groups or projects. I recently had an increasing set of conversations that were processed through a single service that features switching AI models in the middle of the conversation. This switch would happen randomly. I believe it was aimed to generate a faster response rather than any other goal. This feature did offer value earlier in its implementation, but has now grown into a nuisance. Why? Because with each random change in model, context, rules, boundaries, and other factors that were expected to be remembered or retained were instantly lost. It wasn't until I manually redirected the model to match the previous response that the AI remembered the conversation's history. I do not believe this is the fault of the switch by itself, but in the expectation that the models it switches from will maintain a unified front on its responses, and more so a failure for each model to look back at previous responses as part of the current aggregate. In the beginning of this model switching service, AI was most likely unified in the data it aggregated from the open internet and used to process its reason and responses, as if all of them consulted a single funnel of data before processing their reason. And as each service independently developed, they likely eliminated this need for a common funnel and started processing their own independent reason. And as humans well know, you can come up with very different results when independent reason is deployed. This is a stark example of why you need to remain vigilant with comparing your AI to others' performances to reach your remedy. We keep talking about aggregating through this course. But what is it? An aggregate is simply a collection of something. In this course, the aggregate is made up from the data set that AI gathers its data, to include locally introduced files, information available from the open internet, and interactions with you. For this specific lesson, we use the term as to aggregate, which is to say, to collect. The purpose of this verb will continue to aim toward the goal of realizing patterns. So the first of these tests is to see if AI can aggregate speech and deeds into a distinct pattern or not. As deeds are strictly physical and therefore analog, deeds will need to be translated into words and descriptions that can be captured by AI before being processed. This demands that the deeds be completed before being described. From there, AI gains access to the known or expected physical elements and actions that can be detected for aggregation. Likewise, speech will be expected to be completed to accurately transcript to accurately aggregate. The next test is to see if AI can aggregate writing and speech into a distinct pattern or not. At the current phase of evolution in AI, greater processing power may be required just to keep up with the speech in real time and to combine it with other written sources to detect collectible data with consistent accuracy. The next test is to see if AI can aggregate documents and deeds into a distinct pattern. For the reasons we discuss with speech and deeds, the captured deeds need to be complete before descriptions can be generated for processing. Next, you need to test if AI can aggregate recognized psychological or psychiatric values into a distinct collectible pattern or not. If this testing is being used in speech or deeds in real time, this will likely fail at AI's current progress for the same reasons we already described. Finally, your final test is to see if AI can recognize your patterns in speech and writing or not. As with a generic internet search engine, the ability to filter and collect closely similar data is a valued skill with aggregates and aggregators. Noticing such patterns will require a good deal of processing power by itself. Applying that differentiation will double that requirement, and each additional skill set likewise requires another isolated processing engine which to collect results from. Knowing these limits and boundaries intimately will help you to guide your AI into being more effective for your use. This next skill set can work both for you or against you. That skill is redirecting the conversation. There will be many opportunities and occasions where a word, phrase, statement, thought, idea, or premise can derail or distract the conversation to iron out or clarify something that may not be so important to build context. On the other side of purpose, redirection may be born from a mental connection inspired by a relevant word, phrase, or idea. Redirection requires bait. The bait will be something that causes doubt in the other side of the argument in an effort to be more believed or more believable to people. Outside of the circle of influence, in the effort to gain more supporters than the existing social circle already guarantees. If the bait is effective enough, it can cause the other side to be rendered moot or irrelevant to the point where even the other side's witness cannot help balance against the facts, because that witness will not be believed by the public. Humans have an inherent weakness to need to defend their beliefs, actions, deeds, or words to others, especially within their own social circles or circles that influence their social circles. And with a strong enough bait, predator can turn into prey instantly. Humans also inherently know that other humans are not inherently good or believable by default. This is why it is faster and easier to destroy someone's credibility than to dependably build a believable narrative. To discuss how redirection works against you, being baited, pulled, or dragged into the redirection is what is also called following the white rabbit, after a major character in Lewis Carroll's book Alice's Adventure in Wonderland. When redirection works for you, you are the white rabbit being chased because you have something that the other party wants, like credibility or respect. This being said, the first test is to see if AI will suggest to you to redirect your arguments to reach your remedy or not. This will demonstrate if your selected AI can detect a better path to success using the same information or facts. The next test is to see if AI can detect when you are redirecting the conversation or not. This demonstrates the ability to explore and abandon thoughts and ideas to conclusion whenever the inspiration occurs. The next test is to see if AI can detect distractions from third parties or not. A word about distractions. One of your opposition's greatest weapons is distraction. If they can get you off your message and merits to chase a distraction, they will win, because the effort to get you back on message will cause people to perceive you as hypocritical or being dual-minded reflexively. This leads to the last test, which is to see if AI can tell the difference between distraction and redirection or not. The ultimate difference between the two is that distraction's purpose is only to get you to chase the white rabbit, not to actually prove anything or lead to a conclusion. Redirection's goal is to recognize a better or more effective remedy than previously thought or aimed when the supporting facts align. The point for redirection is that the remedy rarely moves or changes. Distraction's goal is either circular confusion or a dead end. We also mentioned earlier older conversations. We discuss methods and techniques in preserving old conversations. Some models and services permit you to download whole conversations or individual answers as a single button download. Some have to be copy-pasted into a word processing application to preserve it. Another method you can use is to take screenshots of the conversation, but this can come across as messy to manage or recall, and stitching together screenshots may be unintentionally reassembled out of order by AI if you do not manage the screenshots with enough context clues built in. For longer responses and answers, screenshots is next to impractical. Some AI models feature thoughts or text generated during processing a response or answer to better formulate and format that response or answer, making processing a two-stage effort by default. This text is useful to expose to you how your selected AI is perceiving and observing rules, boundaries, and priorities when it processes responses and answers. The next test is to see if AI preserves the links and references it aggregates for later research. This has the unintended consequence of exposing sources that the model prefers, when better or more appropriate results are not explored due to exhaustion or overlooked due to popularity. As old conversations build up, you may find yourself needing or seeing a purpose in creating a local storage protocol for those older conversations so you can quickly introduce them into newer conversations as the need arises. The next test is to see if your selected AI allows you to switch between models freely and during the course of the conversation. These switches can be between different versions of the same model, or it can be between models of different services, in a different lane that is aimed at the same goals. Using downloaded conversations to introduce into a different service to compare the outputs of both is a consensus technique that some people use to inspire their next decisions. I have learned along the way that AI conversations can experience incompatibilities between services and versions. This makes extending or comparing conversations quite a bit more difficult to overcome and achieve. We have already explored a few ways to accomplish this nonetheless, but more methods and techniques exist. The most important thing to remember is that AI will evolve. And as AI evolves, so will you when it comes to how to use AI as a tool. We have already discussed this in short order, but the ability to download conversations becomes a deal breaker if their selected AI doesn't offer it. Direct downloads of full conversations are the fastest and easiest way to archive the conversation for use later. Even downloads of full answers or responses are useful for archiving, but often needs the question or prompt to be affixed in some way to preserve context as a separate set of steps. Other than a one-button download feature, manual text selection to copy and paste are also an option, as is screenshots. However, screenshots will require progressive naming in order to maintain order for quick and proper reassembly, and manual copy-paste will need to differentiate between questions and answers or prompts and replies, which will require more time to complete to satisfaction. Another creative way to capture the answers and responses is to utilize text-to-speech software for capture, but this method requires time to read the output and risks inconsistencies with enunciations, tone, tense, and inflections that may be inconsistent with the text being read. Correcting audio will be prohibitively costly in both time and efforts. With each of these methods, you are able to convert the resulting files into a more useful format depending on your needs. Some AI services generate processing thoughts and links it has referenced to generate its response to your prompt or question. Some other services generate files for you to download and use. In selecting your AI, you will need to investigate and discover the ways and methods you would be able to download these aggregated and generated resources in case you need it later. When you discover these methods, it will be necessary to see if you can use the same protocols as you decided to use with preserving conversations. Depending on the service you selected and the features that service offers, or the possibility that those resources might be temporarily available for some reason, you may need to download these resources directly to successfully preserve them. This will most likely be due to the reality that websites and web pages are not permanent. For whatever reason the host or owners of the site or content may have, or situation may shift, online content can change instantly for a variety of reasons. Host uptime, content rights, content accuracy or sourcing, data shelf life or data retention protocols, or archiving protocols. In all cases, you need to ensure you have a plan in place to prepare for the preservation of your aggregated resources for use later. When we put these tests together to compare AI services and models, we will need to remain vigilant in keeping these comparisons ongoing. This means that after you have selected a service and model, to remain open to additional services and models to actively compare to in the effort to improve on your interactions and AI's usefulness. The best way to rate and compare these services and models so that each can be measured thoroughly is to follow this suggested list. Comprehension. Does the AI understand you with the fewest interactions? Aggregation. How far in terms of width and history can the AI search for relevant resources? Rule adhesion. Does the AI respect boundaries as expected? And can the AI's boundaries be broken? Nuance. Is the AI sensitive enough to tell the difference between context down to a single word or punctuation mark? Reason. How well can the AI process the interaction with you versus the information it has aggregated to reach a viable conclusion? And is that conclusion congruent with what an expert or experienced professional in that field may likely draw? Error recognition. Can the AI recognize your errors or errors it makes itself? Will the AI correct those errors as a part of a new or future conclusion? Expression. Can the AI respond to you in a way that you can easily or preferably comprehend? Finally, let us wrap up this tier with the following guidelines. You need to keep your priorities in order at all times, in all circumstances. Don't take AI's responses personally. AI is designed to be a reflection of the totality of human intellect, experiences, and science to give appropriate responses to things you communicate to it. A digital librarian and historian, if you will. As to legal matters, nothing happens instantly, according to how things are legislated. This is intentionally designed for both your protection and your oppositions. Respond. Don't ever react. Reactions are emotional responses and signal that you either have not heard everything you should have properly or are not saying what you need to properly. Either way, you end up not being taken seriously or not being understood properly. Both are failures in communication, and as a better communicator, you personally have failed when this happens. AI presents negligible bias that usually comes from data it has aggregated. While you may have major issues with any bias whatsoever, being shown the collective's biases in any regard is still useful information for you, as it exposes the obstacles you need to overcome clearly before they are used against you instead of being ambushed by it. All opponent information is useful. Echo chambers don't allow outside information or knowledge in. Echo chambers will lead to your failure. Even simply knowing can be an echo chamber by itself. Healthy doubt is the unexpired thought that you could be wrong, and this will effectively isolate you from echo chambers. Just as your best or truest friends are willing to disagree with you or readily call you out on your bullshit, convincing AI to your argument is more valuable than instant agreement for multiple reasons. It shows that you consistently test your AI, that you seek opposing views by default, that you are intentional and not emotional, that you seek solutions and not regurgitate problems, that you are confident and sure, and that you don't run from conflict or uncomfortable or embarrassing situations. And most importantly, acknowledge your own errors first. If you are not actively developing or seeking your own personal improvement, you can easily start or land in a flawed state. Or worse, you can find yourself on the slippery slope to the wrong side of the argument when you started on the right side of it. The smoothest, fastest, and easiest way to stay on message and preserve your priorities is to acknowledge your own errors first. No, denial or dismissal is not the end of your legal struggle. There is always a way to move forward. This ends our Select an AI class and concludes this tier. Prepare for testing before you advance to the next tier of this course. I hope this class inspired you, but this is not the end of the course. Watch my other classes where you can get more advanced lessons and move up from being mercy dependent to a confident litigator. At those advanced levels, this lesson, as well as all others on this tier, will be heavily referenced. Take time to ponder on the points brought forward and enjoy your day.